All right. Then I'll get it to you. And if for some reason I want to edit it down, I can do that. As Sakina smiles. I think it's a smile. I can't tell. Maybe it's a smirk being upside down. All right. So then we'll just go for it. All right.
I'm gonna put a
Unless
move.
you want to sit there.
No, I'm gonna put a move.
All right, yeah, we could that side of it.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
Uh,
if you have a question, I
gonna-
wonder who I'm talking to. Is that right? That'd be good.
do you guys want to move?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you could. Oh, there's Paul. So we have four students. I know two of you. You can look up here. Hi. So I have Sakina, got Paul, who's a gentleman in the back by the blackboard.
I think that's me, Chris.
Chris, all right. And who's up front here with the gray sweatshirt?
I'm Nicholas.
Nicholas. I think I saw Nicholas a couple of years back last year looking at a praying mantis outside of 6S, I think. I stopped by and said, hey, that's cool. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, wait, I remember that.
Yeah, I can do. Okay. Anyway, so I guess welcome here to this next installment of Paul's wonderful marine biology club that he put together and he's in charge of. And I only do things when I really have to. I'm not impressed to do things like today. All right. Anyway, so when he first asked me to do like a meeting with you guys, I had anticipated him wanting me to produce some sort of research seminar of sorts. And I would have been fine doing it. I could have cobbled together some things. He said, no, we just have like questions for you. And he listed a bunch of questions. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll make a presentation for that. And then I decided I got too busy and I didn't, which was fine because he didn't ask me to do a presentation for that. So in any event, so I'm here to talk to you guys, but I'm not quite sure what we should be talking about. Sure, marine biology, but I don't quite know. This is very unstructured. Okay. And it's probably the most unstructured activity that I've ever really done. So I'm at a loss, as Sakina is giggling because she knows me too well. So anyway, so Paul, this is your show. I am your guest. I'm not the instructor for this class. So I'm here. What do you want, Paul?
Okay. What got you into marine biology?
What was that?
What got you into marine biology?
I'm certain that you're all expecting a grandiose explanation. It's not that at all. I was thinking about this morning, thinking, how am I going to, cage, my existence here and how this all came about? And the best that I can recall is that I had a brother. Well, okay, I have a brother, but he didn't pass away. But one of my brothers was collecting. He had like some tropical fish, and he was going away for vacation. We were younger. He was like probably 15. I was like 12 or so, something like that. And he asked me to be in charge of his fish tank while he was gone. And so yeah, I would, you feed him, and I saw in the filter, and I just remember this morning, that there was some sort of little wiggly thing crawling around in this filter. And I, being naive and stupid, thought that I created life in his fish tank, right? Of course not. Anyway, so I think I decided to get my own fish tanks soon after that. And I had gotten the typical tropical things. Paul might know of what's called a Jack Dempsey fish and stuff like that. And, well, and it was fun, but you go to the pet stores and they have all these, saltwater tanks too. And I don't know about you guys, but, the saltwater fish really seem to catch my attention. They're bright colored. You got the shrimps, you got this. It's like, this stuff is really neat. Okay. So I decided, so after the freshwater tanks, I probably was in my first year or so, my first year of undergrad. I went to community college first. And I finishing up high school, I had wanted to go for marine biology out of high school. But my parents asked me an important question, what will you do with a degree in marine biology? And I was 18, maybe a little older than you guys. And I had no answer to that question. And so it was an important question to ask. I didn't really know what I was, I just liked the topic of it. So anyway, I went to community college for accounting and business for a period of time. My parents owned a Carvel ice cream store. And apparently I was the heir apparent, but I didn't know this. And so they were having me go for business training. Okay. So anyway, I then got a saltwater tank, and like out of the gate, I got like a 55-gallon saltwater tank. All right. And I filled it with all the critters and da da da. And I came upon what's called a coral banded shrimp, which is a shrimp that has a red and white, bands on it. And I was just, yeah, I was enamored by this creature. I was like, what is this thing? This big claws, and actually, what because it's just you got, no, if put it on YouTube, I was going to get rid of the screen here, but I don't want my personal life on YouTube, so I'm not going to do that. In any event, it did these claws, and I just really, and then it started to molt, and I saw these little floating bits of it. And I was like, this is really weird stuff going on here. So, and so anyway, so that really kind of locked my interest in marine biology, even though I had it subtly in advance of that. And so I was working at the United States Postal Service in their accounting department, dealing with claims of lost packages. And there's a woman there who took her son to South Jersey, a school called Stockton State College. It's now Stockton University, I think, which is where I wanted to go for marine biology. And she knew I collected saltwater fish, etc. And she said, "Oh, Bill, we went down with my son. They have this great marine biology program. You'd really like it." Okay. So anyway, I was working there when I had actually transferred a few times to different schools. I had finished the associate's degree in accounting. I worked in an accounting firm for 6 months, didn't like it. There's another story there, but I'll skip past that. I transferred to Rutgers for computer science, and my financial aid didn't go through, and that I transferred to Kane for business management. So the first 2 years of my undergrad, I was all over the place. Okay, but then this woman mentioned this at that workplace, and I was like, you know what, I really would enjoy that. And so I decided to apply, transfer, went down. And prior to that, I was an okay-ish kind of student, just getting by. I really had no really big focus. I was academically modest, okay? But once I got there, it's just pretty much, I'd like to say it was straight A's, but recently I had a couple B's, and I'm really mad about that. I'd like to say straight A's, but it was a stark contrast to what it had been. And so anyway, so I went down to Stockton State College in South Jersey, and I got to working with one of my professors for like a research project. And during that process, it's just one piece led to the next of my next level of interest. And I want to do this. And I was, okay, maybe I should go to grad school. And I got my master's degree. And maybe I should get my PhD degree. And I got my PhD degree. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then ultimately, I decided that I kind of really wanted to do research and teach. And that ultimately that's what led me to CSI a good 25 years ago, which really hurts to say that because you're all 24 or less, correct? How old are we out there?
Yeah, 21, I think we're all less than that.
I'm 19.
My son, who was just barely born when I started CSI, is now 25 years old. So I'm feeling senior. So anyway, so that's kind of the short-ish story. There's many small pieces of that, a little bit more, maybe more nuanced there. But so that's so what got me into it is I guess, I was exposed to aquatic fish. Yes, and like there are terrestrial ones. I was exposed to tropical fish, and then that led me down the path of being exposed to invertebrates. And I really like the invertebrates. I have saltwater. I have a saltwater tank even now, and over the years, it's gone from a 55 tank down to a 30 tank, down to a 0 tank, no tank for a handful of years, and back up to 30 now, back up to 55. And I do have fish in the tank, okay, because other people like to see the fish swimming around, but I want to just stock it with shrimp and crabs and and scallop and anemones, all the invertebrates, because that's what I really like. But of course, having a fish tank that has nothing swimming around, people think it's devoid of life. So you toss a fish or so in there to keep everyone else happy, kind of. It's not that I don't like them myself, but that's not my passion. Anyway, so that's kind of what got me into it, if that answers your question, Paul.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a follow-up question? Please.
What was some of your research? Like you said, you did something in Santa Clara?
Was that?
You researched in Santa Clara?
Oh, okay. So let me take a jump back now. Okay. So in terms of the undergrad advisor I had gotten involved with for research purposes, he had a project we were looking at small crustaceans called amphipods. Okay. And that project there, we would go, I think we did it probably 3 times, but we would, like, during spring breaks or in the summertime, take rather epic journeys from South Jersey up to Maine, collect samples, and then the same weekend all the way down to North Carolina to also collect samples. So we'd have samples from North Carolina, New Jersey, and Maine in like a week's period of time. And it was looking at the population structure between number of males, number of females, number of juveniles, in terms of these small shrimp type things that live on sandy beaches. Okay. So anyways, that was my first exposure to research. And during one of these trips, he kind of planned it to coincide with a scientific conference up in Maine, which was called the benthic ecology meetings. And benthic means, critters that live on the bottom. Okay. Ecology is the ecology of organisms, of course. And so we were up in Maine collecting these samples during that time, and he was going to these meetings, and he thought I should go with him. And I remember vividly, I had a physics exam the week after we were getting back from this going away. And I was like, nah, and listen, between you and me and the 4 people here in the entire universe of YouTube, okay, in terms of when I was at Stockton, all my instructors were a first name basis. Okay, his name was Rich. I had a guy named Rudy, etc. Okay, I then moved on to SUNY Stony for my PhD. All the instructors were first name basis, Glenn and Jeff, etc. Okay, and so I prefer to be Bill in classes, but CSI students can't handle that. The administrators can't handle that. So it has to be professor that and doctor this. Students in my lab call me Wallace because I'd rather be Bill. So it's a compromise. Okay. So anyway, so this guy, Rich, is like, oh, Bill, you really should come to this meeting with me. I was like, no, I've got an exam to study for. He said, you've got to come to this meeting with me. I said, okay, fine, I'll go. Okay. So I go off to this meeting with me. Basically, he dragged me, basically. Okay. And I still stay in touch with him. And he still remembers having to drag me to the meetings, basically. Okay. And I go in there in these conferences, these 15-minute presentations, about the ecology of this worm doing that, or this shrimp doing that. And I was like, what? It just blew me away. Seriously, just blew me away. And I was like, I think I want to go to grad school. And so I kind of when that all started. Okay. So anyway, I went off, and I am getting to answer Paul's question. I haven't forgotten it. Okay. But I'm building towards it, friend. And so then I entered grad school for a master's project. And for that one there, I got involved with a project where they were looking at metal toxicity in some very small worms called oligochaetes, similar to earthworms, that live in freshwater systems. And there was a site on the Hudson River up by West Point that had been contaminated with a toxic metal called cadmium. And so I was collecting worms up at this site here in Hudson River and looking at the transfer of cadmium from these small worms to some shrimp, they're called grass shrimp. Those of you who had field samples, you know those guys. Okay, they're my second favorite critter. Okay, and so my master's and PhD research was based off of looking at the trophic transfer of cadmium from these worms to those shrimp. Okay, so then after I finished my PhD, I moved off to California, where I did a 3-year what's called postdoc. It's a what's called a postdoctoral position. It's basically a temporary position between someone who has a PhD and looking for a research or a teaching position. It's like a temporary job, basically. So I was there in California, Santa Clara area for around 3 years, where I did, it's not the same type of project, but it was looking at the accumulation of toxic metals. This was cadmium and zinc and copper, I believe, was years back, in some clams that lived in San Francisco Bay. And so while I was there, I knew the job was was temporary. And so I of course had to look for positions, and so ultimately, I was searching for jobs up and down the entire East Coast, because my wife and I were from New Jersey, and we wanted to get back home, ish. And so anyway, so I was applying to jobs in, let's say, like Connecticut down to North Carolina, and ultimately I saw an ad for this place called the College of Staten Island, which I grew up kind of locally, and I never had heard of it before. And the reason is because I moved away from the area to Long Island and then to California when it was transitioning from, I guess, there was what's called Richmond College and Staten Island Community College, something like that. And those two entities came together on the what's called the Willowbrook campus. All right. And so when my wife and I used to drive from Long Island back to New Jersey to visit a family, we would often pass the Richmond College campus. And I would often jokingly say, watch, one day I'm going to work there. And ultimately, I do. But it's not the same campus. It's the new campus. Okay. Anyway, so I took in and I saw an ad for this job back then. It really wasn't so much searching for jobs online, right? Okay, it was more so hard copies of magazines, things of this nature, if I recall correctly. All right, the internet was just starting to be a thing, right? Okay, in the I don't know, mid 90s or so, I guess, I forget. Anyway, and so the position was looking for someone who explored the impacts of pollutants at various levels of biological organization. If you guys, have a feel for what that means, there's atoms and molecules, and then there's cells, and the cells, individuals, and I guess in population communities. Okay, and the research that I had done at both for my master PhD and the research as part of my postdoc research kind of spoke to that across a handful of levels. Okay. Applied. They offered me the job. I applied. Okay. I got a phone call or an email about being invited for an interview out here about 3 days after my son was born. All right. And we were in California at the time. And so ultimately I came out here for the interview, offered me the position. And then we decided to take it. Okay. There was a position that I was offered down in Mississippi prior to that one, but it didn't feel right. It was in what's called Vicksburg, Mississippi. And any of you are familiar with the area, it's the South, and I'm not a Southerner. And what really locked the idea of us not pursuing that as an option is that it was like a research lab for the Army Corps of Engineers, dealing with the toxicity of like sediment that's dredged up from rivers, something like that. It's a long time ago. But the managers, people who would be my what's called, back then you call them your boss, but now they're called your direct report or something like that, right? In any event, all right. They both had commented that their wives homeschooled their kids because the schools are so bad. I appreciate that candor. And I ain't going. So in any event, so I got this, I accept this position. And so with that bouncing around from being in New Jersey originally, that's where my wife I met, moving to Long Island, moving to California, and then trying to find positions, the East Coast. We ended up back in my hometown, which is not something you would have predicted, and some would even say would have wanted. We both have big families, all right, and most certainly being near family is fun. It's good, it's great for the kids to grow up with their aunts and uncles and cousins and whatnot, But when we're in California, Long Island, we weren't pulled into family drama. We're too far away for it, and our families are big, so there's drama sometimes, but it's fun. It's fun. I wouldn't change it for the world. So I think that answered Paul's question. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Anything more? I hope.
What research are you doing right now?
Oh, good. Okay. So the students that have come through my lab have worked on a large variety of projects. Most of them focus on metals in the environment from the context of metals and sediments, metals accumulated by organisms, and then how those metals are maybe transferred up food chains. Okay. We also look at various measures of toxicity to organisms with metals. Most of our projects involve what are called estuarine or marine species. Estuarine species are those critters that live, where the rivers meet the ocean. The salt content varies, okay. But hold on. And so we've done projects with fiddler crabs and killifish and polychaetes and shrimp and crabs and oysters. I think that's mostly all the ones from the field. We've done projects that are more lab-based projects using things called Artemia or brine shrimp. You might remember them as sea monkeys or know them as sea monkeys, okay? As a small side, when I was probably like 7 or so, my grandfather bought me a container of the sea monkey thing. Back then in my day, it was the same marketing ploy. It shows these pink things with crowns, smiley faces, and you're 7 years old. You say, I want to make these critters, I want them. And then you put the thing, and you get nothing. You do not get these circus things doing tricks. You do not get that, which is a big disappointment. But in any event, so those organisms. I've had some students do projects with salamanders, and that's one that's quite off the path from what I would typically, I'll say, embrace. Okay, but they wanted to, and that was Professor Bruno for her master's degree many years back, and she wanted to look at the relationship between metals in forest soil and the population abundance of salamanders. I was like, okay, I don't know salamanders, so good luck to you. But she did a great job. She did a great job. Many years back, one of my first PhD students really wanted to work on mice. I was like, listen, I don't do mice. You can do it, but not with me. I have no interest in doing. And really, the problem with that is regulations. All right, there's the animal facility here on campus, and they have mice downstairs and rats, and there's lots of paperwork, lots of rules and regulations about that. And it's more paperwork than I really want to get involved with, because I don't need mice to ask my research questions. But ultimately, that student worked on fiddler crabs, so it was a change for him. So we've also just done basic surveys of metals in the environment, metals and sediments from around Staten Island, and anyone who's interested, I can bounce some papers off to Paul. I can send you guys, no problem. They're out there in the ether. But as you probably know, we're next to the Arthur Kill. All right, it's not the cleanest places. Okay, we have the world's largest landfill here on Staten Island. Okay, fresh goods landfill. All right, and there's certainly environmental impacts because of those things. Okay, but things are much better than they used to be. Way before you were born, the 60s, 70s, things were pretty horrific. And it was because there weren't really many regulations regarding, the disposal of pollutants, etc. But as time progressed, there's been laws, regulations passed, and things have cleaned up, have gotten better. But there's still what are called legacy pollutants, things that are still in the sediments and get released when there's storms and things of this nature. And of course, there's newfangled things every day. There's concerns these days about pharmaceuticals being released into the water column, into water sources. Okay, and there's an ever increasing interest or concern with what are called microplastics. You guys probably have heard this term before. Of course, that plastics in the ocean can cause a problem. You have turtles that might eat a plastic bag, or seagulls will eat the caps of things. But these plastics break down into smaller particles, and smaller critters eat those particles too. The same basic, they think it's food. Okay, and it can get into their systems. There can be some toxicity from the leaching of chemicals out of those plastics. Okay, there is some concern for exposure of microplastics to humans. I'm still on the fence about what that really means and how important it is. They're finding that there can be these microplastics in like seafood, in the tissues, but I haven't seen enough research yet to have me be overly concerned about it for exposure to humans. It's only because I haven't seen the research on it yet. Okay, but most certainly, Professor Bruno could speak to you at length on why we should be concerned, because that's really what the focus of our PhD research has been. So that's kind of what we've done in recent history. Give me a second here. Yeah, those are the main things we've done. Yeah.
Oh,
All right, so let me take a big step back here, okay? So I've got behind me, a picture of a tropical environment, right? Okay, most certainly you guys know that that's not the Arthur Kill, right? Okay, that's a Caribbean kind of situation, okay? So when I went to grad school, I had gotten certified to dive because I thought it made sense that a person studying marine biology would be able to dive. I didn't know what my research was going to be at the time, but I thought it made sense to get certified. So I'm living in Long Island at the time. I got certified, but out there, you get certified by your training in pools. You do like what's called a core dive. You dive in a freshwater system first, and then you do what's called an open water dive. And this was, in Long Island Sound. You guys ever seen Long Island Sound? It's kind of murky. It's not crystal clear blue, and you can't see more than, a foot in front of your face. So it's not really fun. Okay. So I had done it I got certified for that purpose way back when, and I never used it. Okay. Fast forward, I mentioned my son, he's 25 now, my daughter, so she's 30. I'm getting old. Anyway, so when she was going to college, about your age, she went on a study abroad program and to Africa, and she got certified for diving when she was there, and she went on a handful of dives. And she comes back, it's like, Dad, we got to go dive. You got to get recertified. I was like, I probably should. So I took and I got recertified. I didn't for a moment think that I would just jump in the water, not having ever done it. So I just went through the whole class again. Okay. Anyway, so did that, and we went for we've done it on at least 2 dives, maybe it's 3. I forgot. We went to, I think, Bonaire once, and Cozumel. Is that a place? Okay, I think we did. I think maybe we've gone on 2, and it's very fun. Okay, but it's unsettling. It's kind of it's dangerous, right? Okay, you got to be very careful what you're doing, and you have to do it right, because you could drown, right? If you don't do things right. And we're out there on one evening dive. Actually, before I do that, okay. So anyway, so she went to the study abroad. She got certified. She asked me you know, if I wanted to get recertified, etc. Okay. Around the same time, my son, he was in Boy Scouts. I was an assistant scout leader, and he went for a trip for like a week or so down in the Florida Keys. It was called okay, I have a beagle, and he starts to howl during the day. Can you hear him right now?
Yeah.
Okay, now my black lab will join in. They'll both moan for a moment, but they'll settle down. And my son just came out of his office to shut the dogs down because he knows I'm in a Zoom session. Anyway, so they're stupid, but they're fun. Anyway, so we then go down to this thing called sea base, which is basically you spend a week on an island without water, electricity. It's basically like Survivors, like the Lord of the Flies almost is, right? I was the adult in the room, okay. But along the way, you canoe from one of the islands, Florida Keys, to a smaller island. It was like a 6-hour day of a canoe trip, just rowing all day long, okay. And at one point during the day, they stopped us midway out and they let us do some scuba diving. Okay. Now, I am a marine biologist. The guys in the troop knew this, but I had never scuba dived or did snorkeling ever before in my life. Okay. So I'm jumping in the water and I'm like a kid in a candy store. I just can't contain my excitement and my joy with seeing all these things I've been reading about for a million years. I go down and see an enemy, guys, an enemy down here. They were just having a ball laughing at Mr. Wallace, etc. It was really fun. So anyway, soon thereafter, in combination with my daughter saying I should get certified, I did, and it was good. So anyway, so one of the very first dives I was on with her, we're diving at night. And you know, she was was my dive buddy, and we're driving around, and I hear her being really animated with the regulator and trying to get my attention. She grabbed my arm at one point and almost grabbed the regulator out of my mouth by mistake. And I'm just my first diving, you know, trip. I'm like a little bit weirded out, and this is now at night. And ultimately, she saw an octopus that she wanted to get my attention to see, which I appreciated. I said, "Sweetheart, I appreciate that, but you scared the bejeebers out of me." Okay. Anyway, one of the other dives we were on, we saw almost like a picture behind me here, but there are like at least 15 either probably squid or cuttlefish just in the water, pointing their legs at us, just watching us. They all moved like that, just watching us go. That was neat to see. And also at one point, we stumbled upon there was a huge what's called a sea cucumber. They're related to starfish. Okay. Which one of you guys had invert with me? No, Paul has invert now. Sakina had marine biology, right?
Right.
Do you remember the phylum for starfish? Paul, you guys have that yet? What's that?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. Echino spiny skin. Good, beautiful. Okay. Anyway, and so anyway, we saw this huge sea cucumber. It just like when you go to the deli and they take out that big chunk of salami and they open it for the first time. It's like a 3 feet. It's like a foot long, right? Like this big, right? That's how big this thing was. It was great. Anyway, so those were a couple diving experiences that were really, really fun. So yeah. What else you got, Paul? Or anybody else, rather? How about I give you this? Life at CSI. All right. So most certainly, we as faculty we're obligated to teach various number of classes, etc. Okay. For the most part, as you advance in your career, you do have the choice kind of which classes you'll take on. Okay. And you have the option to like propose like new classes that are in line with your interests. Okay. When I first got to CSI, there wasn't a marine biology class. I thought it made sense. So I wrote up a plan for it. It was ultimately approved, and I've been teaching that. for a good many years now. Okay. I think I find it fun. Okay. There was a period of time where I thought maybe, my career would lead me to different institutions in the area. I won't go into any more detail on that, except that, I really do enjoy taking students on field trips and being out in the field with students, even though it's crazy, it's nerve-wracking, it's messy, it's loud, it's also exhilarating, and then have students come back in the lab and, process samples and have a chance to really see the things that are out there in their backyard pretty much. Um, most marine biology classes that I know of, from larger institutions, it's just lecture and PowerPoints and pictures, no lab, no field work. And I wouldn't enjoy that as much.
That does not sound enjoyable.
What's that?
Yeah, that does not sound enjoyable at
It,
all.
no, it really wouldn't be, so there's that. Okay. Then a handful of years back, I used to teach the ecology class that Professor Veet and Manet teach now, I believe, and Mitra, maybe I forget. But there was a change in who was teaching what courses, and I was asked if I would teach the invertebrate zoology class, and I was like all about it. I said, "Yep, I'll do that." Okay. So I teach that in the spring, and I teach marine bio in the fall. I teach master's classes as well in the environmental science master's program, as well as in that are linked up with the biology master's program. So those are my my main teaching obligations. These days, I'm also teaching the experimental ecology class on Fridays. I've been doing that for the past 3 years or so. So, it looks as though that'll be my regular routine of teaching the marine biology in the fall, as well as some master classes at night, invert zoo in the spring, as well as maybe the advanced ecology class in the spring, and I bounce between these things. In terms of there's the teaching obligation. Of course, there's also the obligation to have students in the lab and do research. I personally feel that my students and I get more out of working in the lab together, hands-on stuff. Either it's the lab work in classes or the lab work in my lab for like independent studies or master's students or PhD students. I feel that lecturing can be tedious for everybody. It's not really interactive. You're just writing stuff down, and sure, it's giving you information, but I like to see students use it and kind of grow intellectually as they're making connections. Oh, I know that. That's the grass shrimp. I'm in charge of shrimp. Oh, I'm in charge of polychaetes. I know. And I like to see that. I'd like to see them owning what they know and being proud that they know these things. Whereas it's tough to see that in a lecture situation in an exam, So that's my perspective. What else you got?
Is there any advice?
So anyway, I was talking to my wife, and I'm going to go and say, I have to go downstairs, give a presentation about marine biology, and I have to be, maybe inspirational today. I was feeling a little tired. I was like, I'll do the best I can. Advice. If you had a time machine and you went back and you found let's call him the 10th grade Bill Wallace, and you said, hey, by the way, buddy, guess what? You're going to be a college professor one day. I'd be like, nope. There is no way on God's green earth that I could have predicted that I would have ended up where I am now. All right, that's all there is to it. Okay, and so the advice is that when my parents asked me, what are you going to do with a degree in marine biology, it was a valid question to ask. I didn't have an answer. But if I had gone to Stockton right away, I wouldn't have met my wife, because I met her at the community college. Okay, and so that certainly put my life in a different path. Right. Okay. Here, I know that you guys feel as though you need to know what you're going to do. There is a pressure on you guys that I cannot imagine, okay, because times have changed, Things are way more expensive than they used to be. Salaries have not kept pace with expenses. And so there's this ever-growing burden to know what you're going to do and start doing it and start earning money. And most certainly you have to get a job at one point. You have to do that, okay? But if you have people in your world who you can rely on, parents, friends, family members, etc., and if you can just embrace the idea that you might not know right now where you're going to end up. Enjoy life. Do what you want to do. Pursue things that light your fire. Okay. Now, most certainly, those of you who know who really know me, I'll say Joe and Sakina. I hope I exude passion because I really enjoy what I do. Sure, some students drive you crazy. Meetings drive, most certainly. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't hate my job. And many people do hate their jobs. Many people do. Okay. In terms of advice, my daughter had started Rutgers for animal science, and she wanted to be a vet. And she had worked for a period of time at a vet place in Princeton, New Jersey, and just realized by being part of that environment and hearing about the trials, tribulations of running a vet shop yourself, and well, she just and also it's very competitive, it's very expensive. Sure, you get a good salary, but you have a lot of college bills to pay. She ultimately decided to take and change paths and didn't pursue going to veterinary school. When she had that realization, she was very sad because she had wanted to be a vet since like middle school. Okay, but she had to embrace that this may not be what my future is. And ultimately she changed paths and she still finished her animal science degree. She worked for a period of time as a lab, as like a lab tech at some pharmaceutical company, and ultimately worked her way up. And now she's very successful she does audits over the reports that the people in the lab produce that are to fulfill obligations for like the FDA. Okay. So I find it kind of fun and cute that she's basically grading lab reports. Because that's kind of what I do. Okay. But as I mentioned before, I started undergrad in accounting. I thought I was going to go to, computer science. That failed. That fell apart on me. Okay. Sure. Maybe if it didn't, I would have much more money. I'm not quite sure I'd be as happy with my job. All right. When I was an undergrad, I had an economics class during the business degree. Okay. And the professor was talking about, kind of this basic same idea, my future and da 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 da. He was like, so listen, the best job to get is a job that basically is your hobby. Okay. And he said, I like making model boats. Okay. But no one will pay me for that. All right. But I also like economics. So I'm doing that as a job. I'm still making the boats on the side. Okay. I wouldn't say that, this job is my hobby, but it certainly overlaps with my interest in invertebrates and being enamored by that. And I still feel, listen, I suspect some of you have seen me in the lab one day sometimes, and some students, oh, Professor Wallace, I found a whatever it was. And if we haven't seen one yet in class, it's where it's like, I know I light up like a child on Christmas morning, and I run, I was like, tell me. Okay. And so the advice is, you don't think you're young, but you're really young. Okay. But I know that society has this pressure upon you to make decisions, and you'll make a decision. You'll follow a path for a little bit. Okay. But maybe realize it's not your path. Okay. And that links back to my daughter. So when she was frustrated about having changed that path, I was like, sweetheart, I said, listen, it's best that now it's not for you. Because if you had gone to veterinary school and you incurred all that debt, you would then, have to pay off that debt, and you'd be locked in a career you probably couldn't change from. It's better to know early that it's not for you than find out too late. All right. So advice, you're in college right now. You have electives. I won't say you have free time, but you have more free time than, let's say your parents. Okay. They have, mortgages and car payments, and they have you to deal with. Right. And they might have your college to deal with. Okay. And so if you're receiving assistance from anyone, most certainly put your best foot forward to do well in the class that you sign up for, because you don't want any poor grades in on your report card and your transcripts, right? Okay. All right. But also, pursue your passion. All right. That's all there's to it. Every once in a while, I get an undergrad coming into my office hours, and they're fresh here at CSI, and they want to take, oh yeah, I want advice, I want to go to medical school. And sometimes, when I consent, I say, well, do you want to go to medical school? Well, my parents think X, Y, and Z. Well, okay, listen, your parents may not like me saying this to you, but it's actually your career. It's your life. And so your parents can give you advice, but it's tough for me to say that because I have kids too, and I think I have the best advice in the world. I have to acknowledge I may not all the time. Okay. Most certainly accept the advice, understand it, research it, thank them for it, validate they haven't given to you, but it doesn't mean that's now your contract and your mandate. All right. So do what you find interesting enough to keep your attention, for what, 40 years for a career, right? So, hey, and maybe it'll be 50 years by the time you get to retire, right? Who knows? Was that helpful, Paul?
That was very helpful.
Anyway, so what else you got?
I think that was perfect. I think that was great.
I think that was great.
Well, listen, it was fun. All right. So listen, and most certainly, these days here at CSI, it's a weird environment. Okay. Lots of faculty aren't around as much as they used to be. Okay. Because now people are doing a lot of stuff from home. Okay. Because it's possible, it's allowed. This past week has been weird for me for some personal things I've been battling with the shadows. But for the most part, I still had the same pretty much schedule I used to always have. Before COVID, I'd be on campus Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and I work from home Thursday and Fridays because there's always so much paperwork that you get. You like, for instance, you get requests. You get requests for letters of recommendation almost last minute sometimes, and the student's like, oh, can you help me? And like, I'd love to, but I'm just really busy right now. We know who we are. So it's always paperwork to do. Okay. But I try to be on campus at least 3 days a week, and most certainly, even if there isn't any official office hours, these days students bounce emails and chit chat in the shadows where we can meet. If any of you ever have want more from me on this topic, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to chat more at you. All right. All right. So now I know Paul started this last semester with the idea of a fish tank, something or other on campus. As who knows if that ever will come to fruition? As Paul has become aware, there are a multitude of roadblocks that seem never to be moved. They never seem to move out of the way. So there is the possibility of maybe having something up in the aquarium room. We maybe can do that. We would have to coordinate having access to it and keys and stuff, but it's not that's not a huge hurdle. Okay. The biggest hurdle is actually just keeping the stuff alive once it's set up, which, between intersessions and summer breaks, it could become tricky. So any event. Anyway, so Paul, if you'd ever like me to come back and do like an official research thingy-mahoo, I could do that. Okay. I would just need some time.
Okay.
So, okay.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck to you all. Oh, so listen, so let me stop the recording. Boom, stop that. I want to stop recording. Yeah.